And I wanted to welcome everyone again to the My Employment Options Resumes That Get You Hired webinar. We are so excited to have each of you today, and we have a very informative presentation to help you with resumes and a lot of great tips to share. If you are just joining in, my name is Lori Adler. I am the Communications Manager here at My Employment Options, and I'll be your moderator. And I just wanted to mention a few technical reminders. All attendees today are in listen-only mode, so that way everyone can focus on the presentation slides that will be moving on the screen. You may also see closed captioning as well, and if you would like to turn this on or off, you just use your Zoom toolbar and click on the Closed Captioning Live CC button and choose Hide Subtitles or Show Subtitles. So again, just click the Live CC button and you can click on the menu Hide or Show Subtitles. And during the webinar today, our presenters and myself will have our videos off so that there is less distraction and everyone can focus on the slides. We wanted to first take a quick moment to tell you about who we are and what we do for those of you who are here for the first time. And we'll explain a little bit more about My Employment Options, or MEO as we call it, and what we do on a daily basis. And I wanted to mention that our online events are open to anyone in the general public, even if you do not qualify for the federal program we are in. So don't worry about that. And on a daily basis, Employment Options is an authorized employment network in the federal Social Security Ticket to Work program. We provide free work-at-home and on-site job placement services and other free career services to citizens who receive SSI or SSDI disability benefits and who want to try working again. We help them who are in 48 states, and we do help all states except Alaska and Hawaii. And we recently started accepting applicants on SSI or SSDI from California and Washington, D.C., and to check out our free services or to apply with us if you receive SSI or SSDI, you can visit myemploymentoptions.com, which will be on future slides, and click Apply Now. And for those on the call who may not be receiving SSI or SSDI, we are so glad you are here. Our tips today about resumes can help any job seeker, so we will share some other resources for you as well later in the presentation. And for anyone on SSDI or SSI, you may be wondering, what does Employment Options offer our clients? We have over 20 years of expertise in helping people with disabilities return to the workforce, and our services are free. We have long-standing employer partnerships, and each client receives a personal job counselor. And we also have a staff-certified benefits specialist to help you with benefit questions. And many staff are Ticket to Work participants, so we feel we can practice the personal touch. And on the next slide, I'm going to introduce you to our two presenters. First, Sarah Lind is a senior employment counselor here at My Employment Options. She helps our clients in the Ticket to Work program find work in their local communities in the 48 states we serve. And Sarah has been with our company 11 years. And our second presenter is Miss Lisa Seeley, and she is also a senior employment counselor as well. And she helps our clients in the Ticket to Work program find work from home jobs as well. And Lisa has been with the company over 11 years too. And Lisa, like myself, is also a Ticket to Work program Social Security success story. And our topic today is resumes that get you hired. And on the next slide, we'll review the topics: how resumes can open doors to an interview, how to create a work-at-home job resume, how to create a community job resume, helps with gaps in employment, and tips for career changes. And now I'm going to turn the floor over to Sarah and Lisa to get started today. And Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lori. As an introduction, let's talk about the purpose of a resume. Your purpose has one major goal: to land you an interview. Your resume does this by giving employers relevant information about your strengths, your accomplishments, your experience. Your resume also should look good to you to represent you well. And on the next slide, we'll continue with the purpose. So to get the employer's attention, You want to highlight those knowledge, skills, and abilities that demonstrate you are a great candidate and that you can do the job. On many job sites, you can apply simply by uploading your resume. That makes it so easy. And it's important that your resume be the best it can be. On the next slide, we're going to start with some general tips. Your resume content, of course, is most important. You also want your resume to be well organized. You don't want it to wind up in the out basket because it's cluttered and disorganized and difficult for employers to read. And so we have coming up some great tips to help you set up your resume so it gets noticed. As I mentioned, eliminating the clutter can make your resume look good. To do that, you want to remove unnecessary, outdated information that's not relevant. For example, people used to put references available upon request. That's no longer needed. Employers will request references if they want them. I mentioned to practice what's called the KISS principle. Keep it simple and straightforward, or you could say keep it short and sweet. Most companies these days use applicant tracking systems. When an actual human reviews your resume, well, when it comes to that, they may spend, it varies, up to only 7 to 10 minutes to determine if you are a good fit. So make every second count. We often get asked about the difference between a chronological and a functional format. So we wanted to cover that with you today. A chronological resume shows jobs that you've held and how long and your responsibility. And it does that in a chronological order, starting in your experience section or your work history with the most recent job or your current job, and then going back from there. Functional resume, on the other hand, has less emphasis on that work history and instead show your skills front and center. And so what do employers say about the chronological rather than the functional format? Well, we've done extensive research on this and all the information in our presentation, and the vote is in. Surveys have shown that a chronological format is preferred by employers. In fact, some recruiters actually say they hate that functional resume format. And that's why the examples that we're going to show you today are for chronological resume formats. And now Lisa has some more resume formatting tips.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So work-from-home recruiters typically look for one-page resumes. Keeping your resume short and sweet, using only pertinent information, should help you reach that goal. Automatic tracking systems, also known as an ATS, will scan an individual's resume and can detect not only specific keywords and formatting, but the length of a document as well. Streamline your resume if it is longer than 2 pages. The only time a resume needs to be a bit longer than a single page would be for a higher level community position. So again, our goal is to make your resume as easy on the eyes as possible. Your font size should be set at between 10 to 12 points. Anything smaller than 10 makes reading very difficult. On the same token, you don't want to have a font too large. It will take up valuable room on the document itself. The only exception for a larger font would be for your name that's located in the header section. We definitely want the recruiter to know who they're reading about, but don't set it more than 16. Margins usually default to 1 inch, which can change to keep your resume to 1 page, but less than a half an inch looks a bit cramped. On the next page, we do have a few examples of a resume with the appropriate font and margin setting. Okay, so we're going on the next slide, Lori. This is an example of a well-margined resume with the appropriate size font. Note the larger font for the name and also bolding it out will bring more attention to it as well. And then on the next slide, we have bullet points for 2 different jobs. So here's bullet points for 2 different jobs. Notice where the employment dates have been placed. That takes the emphasis off them and helps make any employment gaps a little bit less obvious. Again, it's very easy on the eyes and to read through.
Okay, continuing with the formatting tips. To keep your resume looking modern and not outdated, use fonts such as Calibri or Arial. Calibri is now actually the default on many programs. You want to use the same font throughout your resume and also to use a black font color throughout. One thing that you can do on your resume, if it doesn't follow these formats, you can use the Control key, the CTRL key, plus the A key, and it will highlight your entire document to make changes throughout. We like to keep things easy. And on the next slide, we've got some more tips. For your section headings, use all capital and bold font. You saw that in the examples that Lisa just showed. And those section headings include things like your skills, your experience, and your education section. To keep your resume decluttered, there's no reason to underline the headings or have a colon, those two little dots as shown, because that adds clutter. Align the section headings on the left margin. And the reason for doing that, people read from left to right, so if your section headers are centered, it breaks up the reading flow. So keep everything nice and neat and organized. As we keep saying, this is important for a successful resume. You're going to use bullet points to highlight your skills, your job responsibilities, your accomplishments. Bullets draw attention to the information that's most relevant and most important. Don't overdo them. And we're going to have some guidelines coming up on how many bullet points you should have in each of these sections, because you don't want the employers to be killed by bullets. Also, the bullet items don't need to be a complete sentence in most places, so a period is not needed there. And in our examples, you'll see them either way. If it is a complete sentence, you may use the period. So, in the resume building blocks, the first thing that you're going to have right at the top of your resume is your name and your contact information. It can be either on the left margin or centered. That depends on your preference. You notice it's okay to have your name. In fact, it looks good and stands out to have it in all caps and in bold type font. As Lisa said, it can also be a little bit larger, but not so that it overwhelms your resume. It's okay to leave off your street address. This eliminates security concerns about your personal information. Yet you do want to identify your city, state, and zip code. Particularly, I'm pretty much presenting things from a community employment standpoint, but for the work from home positions, the employers want to know in what city and state you reside, because some work from home jobs are location, they are only hiring in certain states. And on the next slide, we've got some more resume building blocks. Again, to eliminate clutter, certain words are not needed. And those are those words in red that we have the strikeout through them. So keep it simple. Employers can look at a phone number and know, oh yes, that's a phone number or your email address. So go ahead and delete those and keep your resume decluttered. Now, Lisa, we'll talk about some more do's and don'ts for your resume.
Thanks, Sarah. So just wanted to cover some email address do's and don'ts. You want to be sure you have an email address that presents you professionally. Having an email designated for employment purposes, it eliminates miscommunication from employers. You don't want to miss any interview invites or offer call meetings. It will keep your inbox very streamlined as well. Research has shown that Gmail is the preferred email recruiters like to use since it's deemed a bit more professional and technically savvy. Don't have any inappropriate email addresses such as kissesxox1@gmail.com. And then we also want to make sure your phone number is correct on your resume, even if you have to call to yourself to verify. You don't want to get any callbacks with any incorrect numbers. When you're within the job search process, be sure to have an appropriate voice message. For example, no inappropriate music, family messages, or anything over religious, and so on. People often forget to update voice messages, So remember, we want you to be as professional as possible within the hiring process. And Sarah's going to cover some objectives.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, as we've discussed, your resume does have many objectives, and of course that major goal to get you an interview so that you will get hired. But regarding having an objective on your resume, it's no longer an essential part of your resume. In fact, career experts, recruiters say that having that objective is unnecessary and, yes, outdated. This is especially for community resumes. Using a summary will introduce you to the employer and give them right there front and center at the top of your resume some information about you. And on the next slide, we'll talk about the summary and how to do that for your resume. It represents you for the type of community job you're applying for. Again, it's not typically used for your work from home positions. It's a statement with 1 to 3 sentences rather than just a list, like a bulleted list or whatever, of your strengths and qualifications. This is the major part of your resume that you may want to change up for different types of positions. And we're going to talk about position focusing your resume coming up, because doing that can be so very important to help you get hired. Right now, it's actually an employee market rather than an employer market, yet you still want to make sure that you focus on what the employer's needs are. I love that little graphic where it shows resume, blah, blah, blah. That's right. Employers won't pay attention to your resume if it doesn't appeal to them and what their needs are, or if it's too wordy. Here's an example of a well-written summary for your resume. And you see it has the heading for the summary section in bold and capital letters. And for this person, one thing that I would like to mention, the resume examples that were shown throughout the presentation are from actual client resumes, and successful ones at that. Of course, we are very successful in helping our people get hired. So this client, we started off by demonstrating she is self-motivated and results-oriented customer service professional with 5 years experience assisting customers and resolving issues, highly skilled in identifying opportunities to upsell company products and services. This kind of description is important for a customer service position, whether it's on-site in the community or a work-from-home position. Now, you see that we use complete sentences in the summary, so of course then you want to use periods. And now Lisa will talk about the skills section that is very important for work-from-home resumes.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So going over skills and qualifications, we recommend to use at least 3 bullets within your job, your skills section that matches the type of job you're applying for. So for example, if the job description is requiring typing at a minimum of 35 words per minute, add ability to type 35 words per minute within your skill set. Try and use descriptive words to make your resume a bit more attractive. We have some examples of descriptive words on the next slide. So here I've underlined the descriptive words in these examples. So here we have strong customer service experience, excellent communication skills, both verbal and written, capable of navigating multiple windows, proficient with Microsoft Office Suite, Windows, and Internet. So here's some employment experience. Recruiters are mainly interested in recent work history, generally nothing over 10 years old. Although the experience may be relevant, time changes things such as technology or even education qualifications. Also, if you go back too far, the resume becomes a bit long and may invite age discrimination. Work from home resumes especially must have relevant customer service experience, even for an entry-level position. So employers require a minimum of 6 months to a year of any type of customer service work. If you're lacking the minimum experience qualification, you may need to work out in the community just a little bit to get the experience needed for a work from home opportunity. So within the experience sections, be sure to list between 2 to 5 job duties or responsibilities under each past employer section. Include the most relevant experience that is needed for the position you're applying for. If you add too many bullets with information, that's not going to be helpful. Your resume will be very cluttered, as Sarah mentioned before. So remember to keep your resume as streamlined as possible. And Sarah is going to go over some more employment experience.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, so what happens or what can you do on your resume if your most relevant experience for the jobs that you've identified goes back more than that 10 to 15 years ago that one would typically have on their resume? So to address that, you can add a section with your prior relevant experience. And again, this is more for community employment, since work from home employers typically are looking for that very most recent experience. So what you do in this section is summarize your experience, but without the dates, and show the total number of years experience that you have. And we actually have a good example of this section towards the end of our presentation. Community employers are looking for both the month and the year of your employment dates. And as Lisa mentioned earlier, and we're showing you again, placing those dates to the right takes less emphasis off of them, especially if there are gaps in your employment. What you want to show first, because that's most important, is your job title. Your job title hopefully will demonstrate in a couple of words what you've done, like customer service representative, for example. So you lead with that to emphasize your experience, and as Lisa may talk about and in some of the examples shown, for most work from home jobs, it's okay just to have the year and not necessarily have the months for your employment dates. If you've had two jobs with the same company, I've seen too many resumes where people had them broken out where it looks like they were two different companies that they work for, and it actually can lead employers that when they're glancing at your resume, remember initially they may only spend 7-10 seconds just glancing at your resume. So what to do in these cases is to combine them under one company name. And that's usually the only reason to put the company name first. And we've got an example on the next slide. Here you can see this person worked for XYZ Corporation for a number of years. In the chronological resume, the most recent position or current position is shown first, and then the prior position after that, just to demonstrate the full breadth of their experience. So this client had started out as a customer service representative and then was promoted in just 6 months to an account manager. You will notice that the accomplishments, achievements in both of their positions are shown in italics, and we'll have some more examples of that coming up on some future slides. So under your employment experience section, as shown in the previous example, you're going to show both your responsibilities and your achievements, any achievements that you can highlight. And this is a list with bullets that show what you can do and what you've accomplished. Now for your responsibilities bullet points, use action words such as manage, coordinated, initiated, rather than phrases like responsible for. The action words really emphasize what you did and what you can do. And one thing that I'd like to add here is that you can go on Google or any search engine and look for resume action words, and then find ones that are relevant to what you did. And in just a bit, we're going to show you some more examples. Again, one way to highlight those achievements is to put them in italics. Also, you want to use numbers to quantify your accomplishments whenever possible. So if you're currently working, pay attention to those numbers for your achievements. And we're going to talk about that on the next slide. So in most jobs, yes, even including our jobs, we have goals that we are wanting to reach and achieve. So those things could be exceeding quotas, increasing sales, saving money for the company. Also, show how many people you supervised For a payroll person, how large was the payroll that you processed? And on the next slide, we're going to show examples of quantifying those numbers. So in this example, this client was a payroll specialist working for Options for All, and she actually had a very large payroll. She worked at Coca-Cola actually, but we do change things up a bit to keep our clients' privacy. And she streamlined payroll processes, which when she was there, which saved the money, $13,000 annually. So if needed, you'll see in this example on her resume with her job title, the company name and the dates and everything, it was too much information to fit just on one line. So starting out again, by highlighting your job title, which shows what she did, payroll specialist, right there. And now back to Lisa for more resume building tips.
Okay, so let's talk about some education. Here's some tips when composing your education section. Use pertinent education. Use trainings or certifications that are related to the jobs you're applying for. So for example, if you're applying for a medical assistant job, you really do not need to add your completed real estate program to the resume. If you're still in school and haven't earned a degree, show when you expect to receive it. Here's an example: Bachelor of Science, University of Phoenix, and in parentheses, your projected graduation date is May of 2024. Keep in mind that generally dates are not used under education sections, only with the exception of an upcoming graduation. So you do want to include any current applicable licenses or certifications. Former licenses or certifications are okay to use on a resume since it would just emphasize your experience within the field. But you do need to be mindful that there is a huge difference between receiving a certificate from an actual completed a training or earning a certification, which is from an educational program. The next slide will show the differentiate the two. So a certificate, they're recognized when completing a training program on a specialized subject. A certification is awarded by completing a certification process that usually involves an exam. You need to make sure you're labeling your distinctions accurately and not misrepresenting yourself in any way. So getting a work from home job can be pretty time consuming. It's a very competitive process. Thousands of people can apply to a specific job with only a very few openings to fill. So you need to create a work from home resume that stands out and gets you noticed. So I know we have touched base a bit earlier in the webinar on automatic tracking systems. I wanted to get a little bit more in depth about this process. People don't realize this, but initially, most resumes do not get seen by human eyes. And this is due to the fact that thousands of people will send in resumes, and it would take way too long for a human to sort through all of them. So with that said, your resume will go through the ATS first. If the system has selected your resume to go through to the next step of the hiring process, then the recruiter will look it over a little bit more in depth. The tracker will detect keywords. So again, we want to use supportive words pertaining to that job description. I would suggest you review the job announcement and use some of the adjectives actually listed in there. But do know, ATSs cannot read contact information. The header is the section above the body of the resume, and it's considered outside normal margins. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you examples of some keywords that you could use. So here I've underlined examples of some keywords within a job description and requirements needed for that position. So the job is a customer service representative, and the description is answering inbound calls for a leading national wireless company. Perform troubleshooting on products and services, may involve soft sales. Then the minimum requirements would be ability to multitask, several years customer service preferred, excellent computer skills, and ability to navigate multiple screens and programs. Some other requirements that are good to have would be computer literacy, not afraid of new technology, able to navigate between multiple windows, and ability to work independently with little supervision. So if you are wondering what the employer's needs are, look at that job description and use those exact words within your resume. And Sarah's going to talk about minimizing some job hopper images.
Thanks, Lisa. And let me add, regarding the applicant tracking systems, yes, they are used by community employers as well for jobs on site, or you'll be working in the community rather than working remotely, working from home. Oftentimes you are able to tell when there is an applicant tracking system because it will redirect to a different site, and you'll see in the URL or the website address that it's different from the address that would be on the company's website. That's usually a clue. But go ahead and set up your resume in a way that whether they're using an applicant tracking system or not, your resume is going to get noticed. And one way to do that, employers really don't like to see job hoppers where they've had a lot of people who have had a lot of short-term jobs. So what one can do is to combine them into one employment section. Also, and this is particularly pertinent for work from home jobs, if you've had a short-term or seasonal job doing remote work, don't discount that if you acquired important skills or experience, particularly that working from home. The work from home employers want to see any amount of remote experience. And so on the next slide, here's an example. Now, this is a community position. One of my clients had worked in a couple of hospitality positions, and yes, some of them are seasonal, particularly here in Florida, where we had the La Tourist season. And at that time, she was currently working with Fairfield Inn. And in that and her other hospitality positions, she acquired some important skills and experience, including greeting guests, scheduling reservations, which a lot of scheduling can be done in remote jobs, answering inquiries, handling the phones, routing calls, and things like that. And yes, there's jobs working from home and receptionist type positions as well. And the resume that we put together for this client, she had great computer skills, which really helped her for her skills section. And she got hired for an entry-level help desk support position and making much better pay than she was making in her hospitality positions, like in front desk and things like that. And so for our next tips, as I mentioned earlier, you may need to position focus your resume for various types of positions. And the primary places in your resume where that's done are your summary and your skills sections. And this will demonstrate your experience for the identified positions. And it helps your resume get noticed and helps you to get hired. For all the years that I've been doing resume, including being a recruiter for a staffing agency in my past history, I always wondered, and then I finally came across an article that explained it, so thought I'd clue you in, as far as not using the first person I or me in your resume. And the reason is employers know your resume is about you and your experience. So that's the best explanation I've ever found. So when you're writing your resume, only your current position should be written in the present tense. And here's some examples. Answer the phones and assist customers, accurately enter customer orders. And on the next slide, I've got some examples of describing your past work experience in past tense. And be sure to do this throughout your resume. So this client resolved billing issues efficiently and also maintained an accurate client database. And see how these words really demonstrate what the client can do in a way that's going to help them get noticed. Also, too, to help employers understand what your skills and abilities are, is to spell things out for them, particularly if the job is in a different field than the job you had worked in previously. So spell out acronyms. Those are those where you've got it in all capital letters. Also avoid slang or jargon that's very field specific. And identify things like the type of software that you use. And in this example, this client had worked in the healthcare field where she ensured the company was compliant with HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Now, if she were applying for a job back still in the medical field, all that spelling out would not be necessary because medical health providers understand what HIPAA is. We also included her computer skills, particularly those that she used for her next career. This was a career changer, and we're going to talk more about career changes coming up. But here in this example, she used Kronos HRMS, and that's a human resource management system. That's why we spelled that out. And now back to Lisa for some more general resume tips.
Okay, so in order to take yourself out of any discriminative scenarios, don't disclose any unnecessary information, such as your marital status or your age or disability status and so on. The Americans with Disability Act puts the law on your side, so you do not have to disclose your disability. And as a client of Employment Options, we will provide you with that support and further knowledge on how to protect yourself against that discrimination if it comes up. So job gaps in employment are pretty common, especially for those who have a disability. You should address any gaps in employment if you have been out of a job for over a year, but they can be easily addressed and eliminated with some creative writing. So here's an example on the next slide. So ask yourself, have you been doing volunteer work? Were you a homemaker or caring for another family member? Are you an eBay seller or doing odd jobs? Have you been a student or furthered your education at all? So on this slide, we're going to use the example of a homemaker. We use the job title Household Manager from 2015 to 2019. Managed household, including budgeting and paying bills, purchased food and supplies, and handled household repairs and vehicle maintenance, organized and coordinated schedules for family members. So these bullets show skills in project management, time management, and independence. And notice only the years are used to help eliminate gaps in the time. Sarah is going to go on with some more gaps of employment tricks and tips.
Thanks, Lisa. And this is primarily for community employment, that employers actually count volunteer and internship experience. And I work with assisting clients with federal employment, and our federal government definitely credits relevant, and that's the key word, relevant unpaid experience. And there's no need to show that it was unpaid work. And this information, again, is based on research as well as announcements and information on the federal job site. And I'll have some in the Q&A section. I'll talk about federal resumes a little bit. So do stay with us through the very end of our presentation if you can. And so on the next slide, I've got an example. And here, this is in the experience section. And my client had was an intern as a medical researcher for a large university medical center in New York. And she gained some very valuable experience while she was there. The reason I've shown the intern, I did put that in parentheses, is because it was rather short term. And so we want to keep that job hopper image minimized. She was only there a total of right at 6 months. On the next slide, as we've been talking about throughout our presentation, your resume is used to emphasize your skills, abilities, and the education that you would utilize both in your current career or for a career change. One way to identify skills, you want to look at skills that could be transferable to new types of jobs. And on the next slide, we'll talk more about what those transferable skills are. For example, a restaurant server has experienced both customer service and also some sales. And in this example, we show what those skills are. And with regard to the upselling of additional menu items, that can be very important in various types of community as well as work from home positions. For example, if someone were looking for a job or applying for a job for the cable company, local cable company, and that can be done from working from home, working remotely, is they might want you to determine what customers' needs are and perhaps upsell to a package that's going to meet those customer needs instead of just having the cable or the internet. And so a food server may offer a combo meal when somebody orders a sandwich. Do you want fries with that? Would you like to make it a combo with fries? So those are some examples of transferable skills. Learn the language of your new career field. Do some research online, do some Googling, and then find ways to include keywords. We've talked about keywords a couple of times throughout our presentation. Lisa did a great job. Find some job postings that contains keywords for the types of jobs you would like to apply to. And always put your best face forward and your strongest points first on your resume. Next, we're going to show you examples of both a work from home and a community resume. Again, these are actual client resumes that we've changed up a little bit for our presentation. Anyone who is registered that's present here today, as well as those who perhaps came in later, obviously you've registered for our webinar presentation, and you will receive in about 7 to 10 days the presentation slides. Links throughout our presentation will work, and you'll be able to look back through things and see how you can do things on your resume. So in this example, this is a work from home resume, and we've got the skills and the experience section on this first slide. One thing to keep in mind is that these are actually one-page resumes, both of these examples. We just split them into slides so that you could see them easily. Now on this slide, this is a really good tip and trick that I've learned is by putting that line across, then you can pull up everything up right to your section headings and not have a space in between them. And this saves and keeps your resume on a one-page format. And so on the next slide, we'll continue on with Sally Smith's resume and show you some examples of the work experience and also her education that was pertinent to the types of jobs that she's applying for. So these resumes, the actual resumes, are in 11-point font and slightly smaller than the 12-point. You don't want to go, as Lisa mentioned early on, no less than 10-point. You actually can do a 10.5 or 11.5 to keep to that one-page format. You just have to go in there and type in those numbers since it's not a selection on the drop-down menu. And okay, this one, Nancy Jones. On one thing that I wanted to point out here is, and I actually did this for this specific client. Her name is Nancy Jones to protect her confidentiality, as we do with all our clients. She had some specific experience that was relevant for a job which she wanted to apply for. She worked for a large university medical center, and I changed the names of the companies as well. But the job that she wanted to apply for was looking for hospital type experience, and she had 3 years experience, yet it predated the other experience on her resume. And so again, we put showing her total years of experience. She did have 3 years experience, but not showing the dates. Otherwise there might be a gap between that and the job that's shown just prior to that. And we showed her education in this example as well that was relevant for the position that she's applying for. And now Lisa will provide some more information about our services.
Thanks, Sarah. So next slide, please. Just wanted to kind of review some of our services before we get to our question and answer section. So if you want to learn more about employment options and how we can help, you can visit our website at www.myemploymentoptions.com, and there's a huge Apply Now button, so click on that, and you can fill out our application and see if you qualify for our free employment services. And you can also find some job openings on our site. You know, those are just examples of what we have available. My Employment Options, we offer personalized services, including resume writing and customization, interview preparations and other assistance to help you get hired and find your job. Okay, Lori?
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Lisa and Sarah, for all those tips and information you shared. It was a lot of great information, and I appreciate that. And before we get to some of those questions and answers, we wanted to let everyone know just some other resources and books that may be helpful in your job search, or if you help job seekers with their resumes as part of your job. Our CEO, Paula Vier, pictured here, has written several career workbooks that we also use with our own clients, and she also has an ebook available on Amazon. To review her resources, you can visit our website at myemploymentoptions.com and hover over the FAQ section at the top menu, or you can visit the link on the slide. You can also ask your local library and request it there. We also use another workbook of hers with every new client that comes on board as well to help get to know their strengths and goals, and that's called Employment Options for Job Seekers with Disabilities and Other Challenges. And as Sarah mentioned, we'll be sending a follow-up email to you where you'll get a copy of the presentation slides in about 7 to 10 days, and you'll be able to click on any link, including this one, so you'll be able to get right to the resources if you'd like. And as I mentioned earlier, we know that some on the call may not be on SSDI or SSI, or may not qualify for our free federal Ticket to Work services, and that's okay. We wanted to mention some resources for you. You can email us at help@myemploymentoptions.com, and I wanted to mention that is an auto-reply email, so once you email that, it will just send some resources back to help you. And again, as Lisa mentioned, if you do receive SSDI or SSI benefits or know someone who does, a family or friend, just send them to our website, or you can visit at My Employment Options and click the Apply Now button. And if you have any questions about resumes or about employment options that we maybe didn't cover or you think of later, you can email me. My email address is listed on the slide, and that is ladler@myemploymentoptions.com, and I'll be sure to get all your questions answered. And we also wanted to mention, for those not on SSI or SSDI, about our new sister company that was just started last year. MEO Staffing is a diversity staffing agency that we created to help job seekers with disabilities or those who have employment challenges who do not receive SSDI or SSI, because we know there's a need. And MEO Staffing also partners with employers throughout the country to help them hire a more diverse and inclusive workforce. And they are accepting job seeker applications on their website and also looking to partner with new employers. So you can visit their website to check that out at meostaffing.com. And we would love to connect with everyone on our social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, Instagram. We're everywhere. We share about our events, our Social Security news, hot jobs, tips, all kinds of things, and we'd love to connect with you. When we send that follow-up email out to everyone in a few days, you'll be able to click the links here and be taken directly to any of our social media platforms, or you can type in the words here and get to them that way. And I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa and Sarah to cover some of the questions that they have received either from applicants or their clients. And Lisa's going to cover the first one for us.
Okay. So we had Ashley from Florida write in, and she wants to know specifically for work from home resumes, what should be focused on? So the right resume format actually captures the recruiter or the hiring manager's attention. They may skim your resume in just a few seconds, so you want to make sure you choose a format that places your most impactful information at the top. Like Sarah mentioned, chronological is vastly used, and using keywords on the resume is also very helpful. So, for example, many companies look for prior telecommuting experience when considering candidates. This can demonstrate your ability to work independently and show how that you have an idea of the work arrangement and what's required in this unique situation. So if you have any remote experience, bold it out, make it pop. There are a few skills you should include on your telecommuting resume, regardless of the job you're applying for. So for example, technically savvy. Can't call down to the IT desk if your computer locks up during your shift. So recruiters want to know you're pretty good with tech support, and they're more apt to consider you for the position. Writing and communication skills are big ones as well. So definitely state those on your resume. And then we have Peter from California, and he wanted to know what is the most effective method for getting called for a job interview from your resume. So remember, initially the first filter isn't actually a person looking at the resume. It's a machine, the ATS, automatic tracking system. It's seeing whether or not you've included those keywords, then scoring your resume to decide if a recruiter should even spend time to look at it. So having a strong skills section is imperative. If specific skills are routinely being mentioned as requirements for the position, be sure to include them in your key skills section and incorporate them throughout the remainder of your resume. Studies have also shown that the single most effective way of improving the likelihood of being interviewed is by starting every sentence with distinct action verbs. So you want to mix them up a bit, use a variety of them. And don't be afraid to reach out to recruiters to request a status update on your application. Sometimes people do get lost in the shuffle. There's thousands of resumes being, handed out and turned in. So you want to give the recruiter an extra reminder that you're interested in the opportunity and would like to have a chance to be considered for that position. This shows motivation, ambition, and excitement about having an opportunity to interview. Sarah's got 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap this up.
Thanks, Lisa. I've actually developed a strategy for employer follow-up from a training, and yes, we keep our skills and abilities our own up to date so that we can keep current on trends and things like that to help our clients. And as I mentioned earlier, in the information that we're presenting throughout this webinar. So Barbara from Georgia wants to know, how do I promote my education over experience? Many times people, especially in a career change situation, or perhaps they've been working and part-time going to school to advance their career. And so education can help you do that. So in answer, Barbara, emphasize what you've learned through your education and training. And the knowledge that you gained can be included in the summary and skills section. Oh, and of course in the education section of your resume as well. So on the next slide, I've got an example of that. So Barbara is an administrative support specialist, and she had earned her associate's degree and also has strong customer service experience. This is so important in many fields, whether it's a community job or working from home, because those customers that you might be working with could be external customers in a customer service type capacity, or they could be internal customers, including your employees, and your human resources are so important when you're working for a company in that capacity. Barbara also has various administrative abilities and that human resources knowledge that she acquired. And here's an example of the skills section demonstrating that knowledge. Barbara completed a comprehensive training on human resources functions, and she is highly knowledgeable with employment law and compliance. And of course, that's important. Everyone wants to, in human resources, it's very important to follow your state, local perhaps, and especially federal laws with regard to employment. And on the next slide, I've got one more question and answer. Alan from Georgia asked, what is needed to get hired in a federal job? Well, resumes for federal jobs do differ quite a bit from a resume that people would use for a private sector employer. And on USA Jobs, that's usajobs.gov, The federal job site actually has some tips on resumes. What should I include in my federal resume? And this is an actual link that you will get. As we've spoken about, you will be able to access them, or just go to usajobs.gov and explore the site and everything. Now, for those who qualify for our services, we have staff experts for federal job placement. That wraps up our webinar, except Lori's going to close out with some more information. Back to Lori.
Thank you, Sarah. And again, we just wanted to thank Sarah and Lisa for today's tips, and we thank everyone for their patience and for wanting to learn more about resumes, most importantly, because they are very important. And if you are a My Employment Options client already, be sure you can reach out to your job counselor for help with your resume anytime. And that does conclude our webinar event. And you can watch for a follow-up email in about 7 to 10 business days. And you'll get a copy of the presentation slides and the recordings. And we wanted to thank you again for attending. And we hope all of you have a great day and stay safe. Bye-bye.